My name is Tom Thorpe, and I'm the Living Collections Manager here at Three Lakes, and today we're going to talk about wood turtles. Wood turtles, which we have two of them on display over here, their scientific name is Glyptomys and sculpta. And Glyptomys basically means carved turtle, and sculpta means engraved. So their name basically talks about the fact that their shell looks like it is carved. Now, the wood turtles are in Virginia, live in the western part of the state, the northwestern part of the state, and Virginia is the southern range for wood turtles. They're more common as you move north up into the northern states in New York and New Jersey, whereas down here they're just relegated to a couple of areas. And their habitat's kind of interesting in that they live in streams and forested wetlands, and they spend a lot of their time in those wetland areas, but they come out in usually April through November. They will spend that amount of time on land. They'll still go back to the water for protection and at night, but for most of the time they'll be on the land looking for food. Now, when we get into the latter parts of the year, November through March, they'll spend most of that time being aquatic. So it's a semi-aquatic species, mixing time both inland and in water. Their diet consists of any of the vegetation that they find. They'll also eat a lot of aquatic and terrestrial insects, and they will eat small mammals if they can get a hold of usually their small babies. But they have a very unique way to get worms. They love to eat earthworms, and they do what's called the stomping technique. And what they do is they will put both of their front legs, they'll sort of move them from side to side, vibrating the ground with occasionally hitting the ground with their shell. And if you go to any of the sites on YouTube, you can look up wood turtle stomping and see that. But that type of stomping will drive worms up, and then they'll be able to feed on them. Now, wood turtles are state threatened, and there's a main reasoning for that. These guys get really big, so they get at a prey size for most animals that maybe a fox or a coyote or a dog would take an adult, but very few take adults. But they couldn't figure out why about 10 years ago, around the 1990s, they were seeing huge drops in population throughout their entire range from New York all the way to Virginia. So they started to look at studying what was going on with these guys, because they're big enough that, like I say, most predators don't get them. And occasionally they'll might get hit by a car. But what they were finding was that the juveniles were being almost 100% scavenged on and eaten by either raccoons or skunks, whose populations were on a big incline. So all of their nesting was completely wiped out throughout their entire range, to the point where the researchers who were studying them gave them a name that now is the same name as the famous TV show. But in the 90s, they were calling these guys the Walking Dead, because basically they were getting no reproduction. All the babies, juveniles, were being eaten, and they thought that these turtles would be the last of their kind as they walked off into oblivion. What researchers did to try to countermand that is they actually started doing nest protection and raising of juveniles to release. So by just putting predator exclusion devices, which are basically wire mesh around their nests, they were able to drastically increase the viability and the hatching of all of the turtles. And they were able to also take a few of those and raise them up outside and release them so that they would be past predator size. Typical wood turtles, they will lay about anywhere from 7 to 17 eggs. And this is a unique species that breeds in the fall. Most turtle species breed in the spring, lay their eggs in July, and have them hatch out in the fall. With wood turtles, because of a lot of the areas where they live, it's very cold, they tend to lay their eggs earlier. They want to lay their eggs a little bit earlier, so they breed in the fall and then lay their eggs in early June so that they hatch out in August. And that way they're able to find safe areas before it gets too cold throughout their range. Here in Virginia, there's two major river systems that they're in, and they're holding their own there. The biggest threats to these guys here now that we're protecting their eggs is still loss of habitat, and it is cars, adults being run over by cars. We're going to continue our discussion on wood turtles. We're going to take a closer look at wood turtles I'm going to pull out a male wood turtle that we have here. And this is an adult male, and males tend to have a lot of orange on their front legs, and they also have a concave or indented shell. Most wood turtles have this brownish pattern on them with a little bit of yellow. Also, males tend to have a bigger, fatter tail on them. So, and both of these wood turtles tend to live about, I think estimates are over 50 years old. So, and they take about 10 years to get to adult size on them. If you were to look at a female, the males tend to be bigger, just slightly bigger. In most turtle species, the males are smaller than the females, but in wood turtles it's just the opposite. The males are much larger than the females. Females are usually around 8 inches in shell length, and males, about adult male, can come in at 9 or close to 10 inches. The female's tail is much smaller, and the shell is flattened on it, and they don't have that bright orange that you would see on the males. Again, the pattern is very similar, and you can see that the shell almost looks like it's been sculpted, which is where it gets its name from, the scientific name on that. And both of these turtles were ones that were confiscated. Someone tried to take them into the pet trade, and we were not able to locate the area where they came from, so they currently now reside at the Nature Center.